roadmap.
Yep.
I'm going to enter the perm. I'm going to extend on the K, both extending on the link, the advantage, and both advantages. Okay.
Okay.
Inclusion of the affirmative is an alt norm and failure. Just add to the perm. Habilos 10. Left to politics have ignored the complexity of the entile between the deeply divided society and the deeply divided northern human world. The dominant motivation of the left politics has been the sequence of the international power. The protest humanism movement has become invaluable. A significant part of everyday realists have put their works in the rational and leftist struggles and have always had a strong pro-humanist character. The exit of the human alienated and highly regulated relation of the material, the biological technology realms and making them one self-organized common. The post-humanist movement one that attacks the practice of politics and the matter of the ideas and institutions, the descent of the human subjects and the main actor of the history of making. History is a human affair and it is not made by the groups of humans, not moved towards post-humanist history. Next. State's project and all destroy any particular imperial state guts post-humanism. Papadonius 10. In all previous incarnations, the radical post-human left politics I described in the picture, which is not an alternative through the fidelity of the situation which suppresses the state, but through betraying the politics being an everyday act and related to the state, the competent forces in the left and the politics seem to abandon in the depth of the dialect of the content and the constitute powers because of the very ground of which the control operates, the constant forces of the state which have been exhausted in radical political potential leaves the radical left politics in the space powerless and stimulated. Their plan cannot connect to our plan because of the fact that they're using the state, and our plan has no intention of using any form of government, any form of state sovereignty. Now I'm going to say alternative. Our alternative is to simply disregard from all institutions from the method of the civil disobedience model by the whereas in rank. Only through this act our civil disobedience can fully separate ourselves from the exposure to the suppression of the government and be able to find the true happiness in the form of reliance found in any institution within ourselves. A link any of our countries has potential of developing weapons of mass destruction. Child 03, the militant forces occupying Iraq failed to discover the weapons of mass destruction allegedly justified an invasion administration. States shifted to absolute certainty that Iraq was a weapon of mass destruction and scale required immediate action of searching the American accusation to justify the discovery of equipment that potentially covered the use of the weapon and the administration of the act of the hostile regime. It was not only more than the instead of the ability to develop weapons of mass destruction vital of any of our countries' potential ability to produce weapons of mass destruction intended to the eye of the beholder and hence the regime. Their fine version of the grand strategy effectively granting Washington right to the ability and aggression lower the barring the resort and the force and the significance and consequences of the collapse and proclaim the argument of invasion. Next, terrorist organizations will also be able to obtain weapons of mass destruction. Terrorists and Oath 2, a second novel feature of the intentional environment of development of the interior networks of terrorism and components of willingness to undertake violence on a massive scale agree and valid concern of national security strategy. The terrorists groups require nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons to catastrophic harm. The weapons themselves are new. Next, American government falsifies dehumanization, what they perceive to be WDM terrorists. Wilford, 2010. Sorry. Weapon of mass destruction terrorism enables the American counter-terrorists to bring the polemic anyone but everyone. Both Rainbow Six and the independent strategies suggest threaten the extinction and the facilities and engagement of the fantasies, including dehumanization, enemy, respecting the nature, and extremism, the hate of our own species. And ever since the black and white memorial in World War II, it increases transmitting the unity of the American culture and the expected desire of reproducing the unity. Next, which ultimately brings the United States to war against the dehumanization enemy terrorists. 2004. Terrorists of the kind of many require the United States as the premature force of the terrorist attack might materialize a protest of terrorists in the process of WMD only. We evaluate the possible magnitude of the harm is depends on itself on the such enemy of the United States might need to force the entire earlier and more often norm during the time of the nation currently and the primary threats to American national security almost be used to force in difficult geographic locations in response to the stateless terrorism organization disrobe and assets. Thus, for the example, the United States is currently fighting terrorists in Afghanistan, Yemen, Iraq, and the Philippines, not them because I've had it in the part of my organization. Next, advantage one, violence. I'm going to expand on it. The violence that government forces upon its people to participate in the act of war only leads to dehumanization of both the people and the people they wage war against. The general idea of the combat soldier is emotionally distracting the enemies in order to kill them, and it's easy to present here in a long list of demonizations, disqualifications, using the enemy in a wage of war resolution, and other conflicts, but that rather is boring to seem that they're largely validated. Varieties of few themes and very high score that animal and insects, but now interesting is that dehumanization of the enemy by the soldier before them during the war helps them ease the killing process in connection to the signal of the interest form. It depends on the vilify and demobilize of the enemy ladder by the attempt to objectify them, turn them into killable things or obstacles. Next, depending on the advantage to peaceful destruction, we must civilly disobey it in violent means, a method not used currently in the United States for any form of reconstruction to be successful. King, 1961. Now there's 3 ways to oppress people in the generally dealt in oppression. One is the method of acquaintance, one is surrender, and one is the both for someone adjusting themselves to oppression. They just themselves discriminate, segregate, or color, colonialize, or what they have. The method of what they use in history is to rise against them, soaring the hatred of the physical violence. Now, of course, we know the method in Western civilization because, in a sense, I have hallmark of broadener and inseparable twin Western materialism. But in the weakness, the method is because they're creating more and more social problems, using violence in struggles for freedom and justice. Unborn, generalized, will precipitate a long dissolved night in bitterness and meaningless chaos, but in another way, and namely the way of nonviolence restraint popular in our generation by Gandhi using the method of magnificent way to free the people from economic explanation and political demonstration I inflict upon them to foreign powers. Next, civil disobedience has proven to be a successful method of change. Brownlee, 2010. The term of civil disobedience was coined by David D. Thau in 1984 essay describes that his refusal to pay the state toll and the implement of the American government is prosecuted in Mexico and enforced the freedom of slave law. In his essay, Thau observed that few people, heroes without a patriot, formers in such sense. Throughout history, an act of dehumanization famously helped to force a reassessment of society, moral parameters. The Boston Tea Party's sufficient movement and the persistence of the British rule led to Gandhi, the U.S. civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and others. Students sit in against the Vietnam War, to a few name, all in instances where civil disobedience proves the most important mechanism for social change. Civil disobedience is generally regarded as more morally defensible and more certainly offensive. Other forms of protest, a consciousness or simple outlook on the communication of the both common and desired for the law of policy are. We have no intention of using any government structure in our plan. Government is the problem. We are proved through both of our advantages and our alternatives and through our links that there is no way that a government can be able to help our world from coming back to what it is. As proven is some of my cards that civil disobedience is the best way to get peace in this world. We need to act now, but it is impossible to perm our 2 plans together because of the fact that ours requires no government and theirs requires government. For that instance alone, this perm is impossible, and now I have cross-ex.
Alright, so what's your definition of civil disobedience exactly?
Civil disobedience is no affiliation with the state. Everyone lives on their own morals, and everyone lives without the restriction of the state's pressure to inflict the state's own morals on them, because the state is inflicting pain, suffering into these people.
How are you going to guarantee that literally everyone is going to engage in your civil disobedience under your own?
Our fiat powers, because I could just walk out of this room right now, and because of
so
the
you're
fiat powers.
You're basically fiating everyone. That's what you're going to do?
Yeah.
transition into this civil disobedience society? Like, are we just going
Do you
to?
expect there to be like
Yeah.
massive wars during the interim when people are like, I don't want to adopt this
Yeah.
new mind frame?
Everyone wants it because of the fact that fiat power.
How do you know?
Because fiat power is alone. As stated in my civil disobedience card that I read during my second advantage, there has been great movements throughout history that have been so impactful that have sparked generations.
So you
of
think
movement.
no one like
No one.
no one kind of like was against the
Yes,
possible
Are you
party
fiating-
that
people were against that.
Exactly,
Against
so-
no. Let me finish. During Martin Luther King's movement, there's a group called the Ku Klux Klan that protested it. So those type of people, I don't know, but they don't have the morals that these people have. But without
So you're fiating morality onto everyone?
we are not fiating morality. We are
Then if there
fiating
are people with different morals, then how can you make sure everyone's
because it's the state that makes it. Those evil morals come out. If it wasn't for the state, evil wouldn't happen. Because of the state,
if it wasn't for the state, the Ku Klux Klan would have existed?
That's correct.
Where does your card say that, or where do you exactly say that? That the state forces evil?
Yeah, but isn't your plan kind of seeding the political? Like, you cite the example of Martin Luther King, who used civil disobedience to change the laws, right? So he wasn't like seeding the political. That card doesn't really get your advantage.
Martin
in
Luther
play.
King changed the world, not just laws, by a man acting against the state because the state said a black man under the Jim Crow laws cannot sit in a same room as a white
That
man.
sounds like laws to me, which he
Yeah, that the state put against because of these with the state laws. He went against and he changed.
Right, but your alt doesn't
Did
solve
he,
because
did
you're
he,
seeding the
did he
political.
get rid of?
He got rid of.
No, I mean like did he?
He used the political sphere to change
Because
the laws.
of the violence
right?
in our society created by the state
Okay.
over the moral parameters, he changed the entire world because one man stood up
Okay.
against the state. Thank you.